Hello everyone, welcome to Coffee Cup Enlightenment. Today I'm going to talk about some of the experiences that you can probably expect to experience during the stages of the subsiding of the mind. And this subsiding of the mind, it can happen naturally, or it can happen sort of from your through the practice what's known as mindfulness or self-inquiry. Pretty much as I've sort of discussed in previous videos. And when you sort of make the mind subside using self-inquiry, some of the experiences you can get when you first begin it, when you begin the process of observation of the mind, is first you begin to see the obviousness of judgment patterns of your mind that have been going on for many years that you haven't noticed, and it's only through the deliberate act of observing these judgment patterns, which is known as self-inquiry, that these judgment patterns become obvious. And as you sort of observe them, it starts to build this recognition, this distinction, that if I'm observing them, then who am I? And you start to generate an experience within yourself that grows, that I am this witnessing presence to the mind, that I am not the mind. And every time you observe the mind, it builds this distinction of recognition that you aren't the mind, that you are the one that sees it. And generally speaking, if you have a very prolific mind, this is how it was. Most of these things I'm going to talk about today is pretty much in my own experience, which is usually pretty common in everyone. But if you do start off with usually a very prolific mind that's quite incessant in its judgments that it's making towards the world, then you can, in my experience, when I started beginning to observe the mind within the first week, I could see some very obvious judgment patterns of the mind that I hadn't really recognized and brought my attention to it yet. And as I began watching within the first few days, some very obvious and judgment patterns within me that everyone in the world could recognize, but I couldn't yet. A shift happened in my distinction between seeing that this was just coming from the mind, and there was an experience of that within myself where I could feel that for the first time I could feel that I was not this judgment pattern that was very old and repetitive and predictable, and could see the exact corresponding responses all the time, and the particular situations in the world that triggered it, that were very common and predictable. And I think it was probably within the first few days when I began self-inquiry, and I did this, and I began noticing one of the first judgment patterns for whatever it was. The distinction within me grew so rapidly that the judgment pattern was seen for what it was, and because I wasn't confusing it as who I was anymore, and mistaken it as my identity, and it became freed from all the energy that I gave it by just seeing it for what it was. And I could see the neutrality of this judgment pattern, and I could also see the neutrality in the world. No longer did that judgment pattern have a meaning anymore, and no longer could it generate an emotional response. And when I did this in the first few days, the judgment pattern shattered into a million pieces, and all the energy that I had given it over the last, 20, 30 years, that I fueled it with my energy, because I hadn't brought awareness to it yet, because I had confused it as who I am. All that energy returned back to me, which is the sort of can be described as the life as who I am. That was no longer fueling the mind's judgment structure, and there was a massive euphoria feeling, and that euphoria feeling is that life that I am. It's been returned back to me, and it's no longer being used by the mind, and it simply happened just by seeing the mind for what it was, to see the judgment that came from the mind, and to witness the world as neutral, and to see the judgment as also neutral, and the mind. And I remember in these first few days, immediately as I had this euphoric experience, I thought to myself, I'm enlightened. This is enlightenment, and it was such an amazing feeling. It felt like I'd lost about 1,000 kilograms off my back that I didn't even know I was carrying. And then several days later, some more judgment patterns came that were very obvious and very old and very repeated in my life, and I had mistaken it as my identity. So had everyone that had met me in my life also confused these patterns as who I was, as my identity, as my character. I started to observe these patterns for the first time as well. And as I did so, and I observed them neutrally and without judgment again, which is again the mind coming in again, I just watched them silently as the silent witness. And again, the same thing happened. The judgment could be seen for what it was. It was just a judgment. The world could be seen for what it was. It was neutral. I could see the process of the judgment being projected onto the world. That was creating the emotion, and that the judgment was neutral, the mind was neutral, and the world was neutral. And again, this other judgment pattern, it shattered too into a million pieces, and the energy that I gave it was returned back to me. The life that I was, that was borrowed by the mind, was returned back to me. And again, a massive euphoria feeling, and again a feeling of that had lost another 1,000 kilograms that I didn't even know I was carrying. And again a thought came, I'm enlightened. Now I'm enlightened. And then probably it was again another 4 days later, the same process happened. Again another observation, again another experience of euphoria and a feeling of release. A weight had been shifted, and then just as I was about to say, now I'm enlightened, I could realize and see that the enlightenment that I am, it's infinite. It took to the third time to realize that every time you sort of release and get this return back of this euphoria, of this life energy that returns back to you, and the process repeats itself a couple of times, then it becomes self-evident that who you are is infinite, and yeah, the continual sort of experiences that I got from that, overdoing it for many years, just become self-evident that it's infinite, the essence of who I am. And the process I've been talking about now, it's sort of, this is like it's a deliberate and conscious act. It's which is known as self-inquiry. But I've also had probably more profound shifts. As good as self-inquiry is, and it gradually sort of chips away at your misconceptions of who you are by observing the mind directly and seeing that you are not it. Some of the most profound shifts I've ever had have happened automatically and naturally. And one of them was probably was about a year ago. It was amidst a dream. It was about 5 o'clock in the morning, and in the dream, it was a visionless dream. It didn't have any visions or audio to it, or whatever you want to call it. And it was the only way I can sort of describe it was a pure knowing dream. That needed no definition. It needed no proof. And the way I sort of described this dream, even though it had no vision to it, I describe it like it was like a mask that was on my face, and this mask represented the mind that was not seen. And in the dream, the mask peeled back, and for the first time, I could see underneath the mask. And I took a breath, and the first thing my mind said when I could see that I was not this mask, it sort of came in again in the background, and it said, how the fuck are we meant to see this? This is impossible. And there was a amazing sort of absolutely incomprehensible feeling of elation, indescribable bliss. And when that mask was peeled back, and yeah, it was just it was staggering, that a realization that it was already there all along, but I couldn't see it. And how are any of us meant to see this? It is impossible. My mind immediately made a comment, and in that day, in that morning when I woke up, it felt like throughout the whole day someone could have slapped me in the face, spat at me, and it would have felt like a sand in the ocean, a grain of sand in the ocean. There was a incomprehensible, and not even if I wrote a million books on peace would that be enough to describe the infinite amazingness of what I experienced. And that night, after the dream that happened in that morning, I went out into the outside and looked out into the sky, and the whole sky was orange, and all its surroundings as well. And I thought maybe something was wrong with my eyes. I didn't drink carrot juice, but I thought, have I drinking too much carrot juice or something? And yeah, just it was an amazing, just the perception of the world was it was just all colours in the night sky, and all the surrounds were too. And then when I walked back into the house, that disappeared. And then yeah, I went to sleep that night, and the next morning I pretty much woke up how I am now, with this sort of mind activity still happening to some degree in the background, and also a heaviness, and the chatter came back again. But it left with it just a taste of what true enlightenment is. It's not a destination. It's not a point that you reach. It's infinite, and it's amazingly indescribable. But and I feel that there was only just a touch of of the infinity that I experienced. Even though when I say just a touch of it, that's again giving rise to measurement, to something that is immeasurable. But that's just the only way I can sort of describe it. And yeah, it was just so I guess there's sort of two processes. One of them is where you can practice self-inquiry, and you can gain sort of little experiences and also some big experiences of elation and freedom from the mind, and a lessening of the mind and its chatter, and also an increase in your ability to not take the mind seriously anymore, which is probably one of the most powerful things self-inquiry does. It's without seriousness, the mind can't keep coming back in and keep repeating itself. Seriousness is probably one of the, or non-seriousness I should say, is probably one of the most important and most vital steps to your realization of who you truly are. It's a measuring tool, I should say, not necessarily a step. And the less serious you are towards your mind is sort of a measurement of your progress towards knowing who you truly are. And if you do get a massive shift all of a sudden, it can rock your world. But generally, for most people, it is common that we receive gradual shifts. And these shifts that I'm talking about, you don't have to practice self-inquiry. You may have already, pretty much everyone has already experienced some shifts in their life already. Whether you've heard about self-inquiry or not, it makes no difference. You're not divorced from the experience of the truth of who you are. Whenever there's a very, very, very challenging situation in the world, and your mind throws an opinion about it and a judgment, then there's an opportunity for the truth of who you are to arise amidst that. And many people that have experienced a massive shift in an experience of realizing the truth of who they are, it's generally a mind judgment has been there in their experience, and then the truth of who they are has come and risen amidst that, and it's used that mind judgment as a mirror to see who it truly is. And the invisibleness of who you are becomes realized through the reflection of the mind, and it acts as a mirror. And that's where all the challenges of life, eventually you can start to see that they become your gifts. If it wasn't for all these challenges, which is basically the mind throwing its judgments, and then you're experiencing this nudging process, you wouldn't be able to know who you are. It takes confusion to then eventually come out of confusion, and then to know yourself more than ever before, as JC said. So yeah. Just something to look out for if you maybe you've already experienced it already in your life, just naturally, or maybe you might have an interest in self-inquiry, which is the practice of observing the mind deliberately throughout the day. When people cut you off in traffic, and the mind makes a judgment, and you can feel the emotion when you've merged with that judgment, and you witness both these things, the judgment and the emotion, and see how this process happens in you, and can see that someone cutting you off in traffic is actually neutral, and that undoes the process of your confusion with mind, and brings about clarity, and enables you to see the neutrality of the world. Ultimately, when you experience an emotion, it's not coming from the world, but 99% of the world will tell you this is the case. It does come from the world. There's industries built on this misconception of reality, and it's to exist until the truth is seen, that emotions are generated because you don't know who you are yet. You think you are the mind, or you don't even realize that. The mind's just going on automatically in the background, and its existence is just a mirror reflection because you haven't seen it yet, you haven't witnessed it yet. And you haven't smiled at it yet. To bring a smile to the mind is the fastest way to undo the mind and bring about the experience that you are not the mind. So, thank you.